With real excitement that we begin our awards ceremony, the Charles Taylor Prize for Excellence in Policy Research and the Jack Layton Progress Prize. Every year when we open up our call for nominations for these awards, I'm really struck by the incredible work happening in every corner of our country in these two areas, and this year was no different. So
the nominations were sent for the by activists, academics, journalists, political representatives, and that reminds me once again of our desire to make Canada a fairer, more equal, more democratic, and a greener country.
This year in particular offer a wonderful reflection of the work, the character of Charles Taylor and Jack Layton. It's my incredible honor this morning to introduce Charles Taylor himself, committed social democrat, world-renowned scholar, really a treasure for our country, and we are so honored at the Broadbent Institute that Charles not only agreed to have this award named for himself, but has agreed again this year to present it. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Charles Taylor.
Thank you. So it's a great pleasure on my part to present this prize. I guess I can pronounce the name of the prize, the Charles Taylor Prize. I got that out. I'm very honored and really humbled by the fact that Ed Broadbent, my very old friend and comrade in arms, proposed that this prize be named after me. So it's a great moment for me to step up here. But the center of attention now is the first winner of the Charles Taylor Prize for Excellence in Policy Research, and is Dr. Leah Vosko. Now, I want to speak a little bit about her work. She's been a pioneering scholar in the whole issue of precarious and contingent work and what it means for the people involved. Vous savez, on parle beaucoup des inégalités sociales.
We talk a lot about social inequality that is growing in our society, in Western society in general, and that's been the case for decades now. But one of the key factors in the growing inequality situation is the very deep and worrisome change on the job market, where stable and safe jobs are constantly declining, and where precarious and unstable contingent jobs are growing. So precarious work is a big problem in our society.
Problem for people who aren't sure where their next dollar is coming from, whether they'll be able to carry on and bring up their children as they want, and so on and so on. We need good policy research to see how to deal with this. And this is what Leah Vosko is providing. And you know, what's remarkable about this is that, as somebody who's been in a university for a long time, this kind of research is not easy to do in the university context because it presses you towards more and more narrow activity within the boundaries of your discipline. Now, politics and economics are two separate disciplines. They used to be, when I first came to McGill and joined as a political theorist, we had a single department of economics and political science. But the way the disciplines have developed just tears them apart. And the remarkable thing about Leah Vosko, and it's a remarkable Canadian phenomenon, she stands within that tradition in Canada, going right back to Innes and others, the tradition of people doing political economy who refuse to separate them. And this research can only possible if you have somebody who can break those boundaries. And this is tremendously important contribution to make. If we want to make get policies that really impact people's lives. That's the kind of research we need. So let me give you a little bit about Leah Vosko, Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. She's Professor of Political Science and Tier 1 Research Chair in the Political Economy of Gender and Work at York University. And a couple of books of hers, her latest, Managing the Margins, Gender, Citizenship, and the International Regulation of Precarious Employment. It's in 2010 with Oxford University Press. And she's also edited a collection, Liberating Temporariness, Migration, Work, and Citizenship in an Age of Insecurity. And that's published by McGill Queens, and it's appeared in spring 2014. So, it's a great pleasure to present this prize, the first in a long series of prizes that can really help us produce the policies we need to meet these important human problems. Present this to Dr. Leah Vosko.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Professor Taylor. It's an honor to receive a prize in the name of Charles Taylor and in recognition of one's commitment to research devoting to building a more socially just public policies in Canada. As someone who is devoted to teaching, I'm also very touched that my nomination for this award came from a former student. When I learned about this prize, two things pleased me very much. First and foremost, it symbolized for me that there is finally greater awareness of the magnitude of precarious employment. And second, and also very important, there is growing consensus on the need to confront this profound social problem. It's important to emphasize, though, that this recognition emanates, yes, from research and theorizing on precarious employment, research extending far beyond my own to the work of many others, but it is in particular a reflection of the success of community organizing spurred by many people in this room. This community organizing aims in grounded ways to address the employment restructuring that is contributing to the rise of precarious employment. And it really highlights how acute this phenomenon is among newcomers into Canada, among women, among Aboriginal people, and among racialized workers. At the same time, while we are seeing this growing recognition, and I think increasing efforts on the part of policymakers to address precarious employment and its associated insecurities, much, much more needs to be done, in particular to adapt protective labor laws and policies to reflect changing labor market realities. Across a range of policy fields, we continue to see inadequate and in many cases deteriorating protections for workers who are often in need of the most protections. The greater the deviation, I argue in my work, from the full-time permanent job, the lesser the protection. So in some of my work on employment insurance policy, I try to show how the design of that policy is premised on the norm of this full-time, full-year job, and thus out of sync with labor market realities, leading to inadequate coverage and access to benefits for a large share of the unemployed, especially part-time and temporary workers, multiple job holders, solo self-employed people. And in another policy field, which I understand you've heard about quite a bit yesterday, in which I'm currently immersed, that is of employment standards, establishing minimum terms in areas such as minimum wages, overtime, vacations and leaves, we can see an analogous trend. given the declining rates of unionization, especially in the private sector. A growing share of employees are reliant on this floor of protection, this floor provided by these social minima. Yet in many provinces, the narrow scope of employment standards, coupled with outdated enforcement, leaves a large swaths of our labor force ill-protected. Once again, workers in occupations and sectors with large shares of women, newcomers, young people, Aboriginal people, racialized workers, amongst the most marginalized. So in both these policy domains, working alone and with many, many collaborators, my research tries to envision and to contribute to the realization of policy reforms that address these problems. And my very sincere hope is that this type of academic policy research, together with strong community organizing, can help forge the much-needed policy change in our communities that is required. So thanks very much for this honor.
Congratulations, Leah. That honor is very well deserved. And it's a real pleasure to have you here this morning. This next award, the Jack Layton Progress Prize, we're actually originally going to call the Jack Layton Prize for kick-ass campaigning. And then we thought, well, maybe we'll tone that down a little bit so CBC will give us some better coverage, So that was the original. That'll give you a flavor of this next award. And to present this next award, it's our real honor to have another inspiration here with us today, a friend to many of us, a relentless, passionate, effective Canadian advocate for justice and sustainability and equality. Can you please join me in welcoming our friend, Olivia Chow.
Thank you. Good morning. Before July of last year, the Canadian government thought that every month when a Canadian woman needs to use the tampons because the period is on or pads, it's not essential. They don't really need it. Therefore, it needs to be taxed, and you have to pay GST on all things like tampons and pads. Now, one Canadian woman thought that this is discriminatory, this is unfair, unjust, that it is a gender-based discrimination. So like all good organizers, she decided to take action, did some research, and discovered that there had been a campaign since 2003 through a private member's bill, an NDP private member's bill for an MP, but it didn't get anywhere. So like all good organizers, she decided to tell her story and brought some friends together. And they formed a team called Canadian Menstruators. And they decided to tell the story online and created a petition. They expected at maximum 50,000 names. They got 70,000 names online, 10,000 names on hard copy. And like all good organizers, they decided to create a video, a story, hilarious story. You can imagine what it gets into, right? And it became a YouTube hit. And not only do they work on the ground, they knew they had to go to Parliament Hill, and they decided to work with the opposition MP. There was a private member's bill by Irene Matheson in 2013, and they worked on that. And then they created a team of MPs across different party lines, working with the opposition. And it became so successful. Now, remember, this is the conservative government, huh? So the conservative, some female MPs, decided to get into the act. And after a lot of real lobbying effort, even the conservative MP decided to move a motion to support this cancellation of this unfair tax. And usually, you know, when there's private members' bill passing or motion that passed, nothing happens. But the campaign was so successful. Last year, in July 1st, the Canadian government, in their budget, decided to eliminate this tax on women's body. So join me. Yes, it is a win. And it's winning in those years are hard to come by. So join me in celebrating and congratulating the 2016 Jack Layton Progress Prize winner, Jill Piebiak, representing the Canadian menstruators.
Thank you so much, Olivia, for your kind words and, of course, being such an inspiration to women in Canadian politics. And thank you to Abad Khan and Megan Leslie, who nominated me. It's really incredible to be in this room with so many inspiring activists and organizers. And it's really, really incredible to be honored in the name of Jack Layton, who is a huge inspiration to many, many voters in my generation. I got involved in my first political campaign in Edmonton when it was just a little orange island, so this is just incredible. I also want to thank my dear friend, colleague, an inspiring activist and LGBTQ book editor, Kathleen Fraser, who helped me along the way through every step of this process. It's a true pleasure and honor to be known as the Canadian menstruator. Although try as I might, that nickname has not caught on. I am known as Tampon Jill. So, I started this campaign because I truly believe that menstruators and former menstruators in Canada are disadvantaged by legislation. The tax on menstruation products was a symbol of the laws that have been passed without consideration of all kinds of bodies and diverse people. Menstruation products are an essential part of public and productive life for people with their periods. The tax added to an unfair burden to women and trans communities, people who already struggle with income inequality, poverty, and homelessness at disproportionate rates. Though the removal of this tax might seem like small change to some, it was a huge win to people with their periods. It made it a little easier for those who had to struggle each day at the grocery store, deciding if they could afford to eat or decide to buy pads or tampons. We had over 24,000 views on our campaign video on YouTube, and I had the horrible task of having to monitor all the online comments that were coming in. Unlike the countless negative feedback our campaign got on news stories on social media, the YouTube comments never saw the light of day. My favorite comment, or one of the worst comments, was from a YouTube user named Deirdre. It was one of the less vulgar comments, and they said, "These feminists are so goddamn annoying." And damn straight we are, and we will continue to be. While I watched bawling and live tweeting as the NDP brought forward a motion on Opposition Motion Day, Canada got to hear all of the wonderful things that we, as annoying feminists, had accomplished. They were written, these kind words were written into the public record and will be remembered this way in history, not by the stream of negative comments on a Facebook post. The internet is not a safe place for women and trans communities. Social media trolling is pretty much out of control, but we flooded the internet and the media with our periods, standing up against discrimination, and our government listened. The convergence between political action, digital communities, and feminism is where my passion lies. And I will continue to work with progressive, inclusive campaigns using accessible digital tools that aim to make this country a more equitable place. We need to keep talking about our reality and challenging the institutions that seem unchallengeable. Like Nikki Ashton said in the House of Commons, when women take up space in this house, their house, our house, to talk about our bodies, our rights, and our reproductive health, we see the power of feminism in Parliament. So finally, I want to thank all the over 80,000 Canadians who signed the petition online and off, and who did actions in their own towns, especially running drives to collect menstruation products for people in need. They inspired me on a daily basis to keep going from behind my computer screen. And I urge all of you here at the summit, as well as all of those people that supported the campaign, to demand that our parliamentarians make room at the table for the many Canadians who are treated as inessential, to include us in political conversations, in legislation, and in our national identity, because we are essential.
All right, well, congratulations, Jill. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Leah. Thank you so much to Charles and Olivia for presenting these awards again this year. And I want to give a big shout out to Unifor and to Goldblatt Partners for sponsoring these awards and this award ceremony this year. Thanks so much to Unifor and Goldblatt Partners.